racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got rid of the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up top here!
Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
This is very close. These guys are going to want to make their way through the field very quickly. This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
A very good evening to the SimSpeed TV network and welcome to your regular Tuesday night entertainment. It's week 4, season 5 of the Just Send It sim racing series presented by Logitech G, custom track art and owned live game streaming. My name's Lockie Mansell and I'm your series commentator for the Just Send It sim racing series. As tonight we head to Watkins Glen for the first time since back in season 1, week 11. And we head there in a car that we haven't been in yet for the Just Send It series. It's a car that comes with included content on the iRacing platform. It's the rear-wheel drive, V8-powered Cadillac DTS-V. Typical race format tonight, 40 minutes. The pit stop to be taken by every driver in the field. A random number of safety cars, anywhere between 0 and 2 safety car interventions tonight. Joining me in commentary to talk to us a bit more about what we can expect with tonight's racing. It's a very good evening to Bo Albert. How are you this evening, Bo?
I'm doing very well, Lockie, and I'm looking forward to tonight's race. I think it's going to be an interesting one. Whenever we go to Watkins Glen, it's always high speed, it's long straights, a bit of a draft pack as well, especially considering we have no bus stop chicane tonight. So some high speeds heading into the carousel, and hopefully some good racing in a car that is very similar to a GT3 V8 supercar hybrid. It's a 6-speed sequential gearbox, rear-wheel drive, weighs about 1.4 tons, so not too dissimilar to the supercar, but it's a little bit less power at 460 horsepower. And also it's got ABS and traction control as well, so makes things just a little bit different.
And because we're not running the layout of the Watkins Glen circuit with the bus stop chicane tonight, it means that if people want to overtake, there is going to be a fairly high element of risk. You are going to have to fire it down the inside, just send it, which is exactly what we want to see. Brenton Hobson, there he is on screen at the moment. He has qualified on pole position for tonight's race. We are running an official championship for Just Send It for Season 5, and it's Ryan Wood who comes into tonight's round as the championship leader after the first 4 weeks, after some very consistent performances. The first 3 weeks, I should say. Let's have a look at our grid positions for tonight, though. Brenton Hobson on pole ahead of Job Stewart. Christian Lindbom in 3rd position ahead of Marcello Rivera. Back to Jack Lemon in 5th position. Ryan Wood, our points leader, out of 6th. And then it's Mitchell McLeod, Emerson Harvey, Kobe Williams and Ben Snell completing the top 10.
From 11th, we have Andy Carey with a 146.2. Very fast times here at Watkins Glen for these cars. Brian van der Wacker in position number 12. Jordan Ford in 13th on row number 7 with Reese Cohen and Matt Lupino, your top 15. Mia Rose kicks things off on the 8th row of the grid in 16th with Mario Vartanian, Tyler Howard, Casey Mann and Tyson McAvoy, your top 20.
We always have big fields with the Just Send It series as we continue to run down some pretty good names buried a little bit further back in the pack. Watch for them to come charging up through the field as the race progresses. A total of 46 cars ready to just send it here at Watkins Glen. There's going to be action, there's going to be drama, there's going to be pit strategy and potentially safety cars as well as the green flag waves to get the race underway with a standing start, and you can see some varied strengths and weaknesses off the line as they file down into turn number 1. Hold your breath as they head up through the hill, through the S's. We know that this is an action zone.
Absolutely it is, so we'll see if all the drivers can make it through as they all work their way through at the moment. For the most part, your leaders are single file, definitely not single file in the mid-pack though, as they all work their way up the hill. All things looking good at the moment, but look at this gaggle of cars, some going 2, 3, maybe even more wide. On board with Mitchell McLeod, he's got a big pack in front, drafting exactly what I said. And look at the move, contact, and around goes a bunch of cars firing into the outside wall.
You could see that was coming, and a bit of evasive action having been taken by a few of the competitors as well. Emerson Harvey's been involved in that, and unfortunately looks like Brian Vanderwacker having his second start in the Just Centered series might have been tangled up in that one as well, and we've got more drama a bit further up the racetrack with the track all but blocked, several cars facing in the wrong direction, and there's going to be a fair bit of damage once we sort through all of this.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can see the chaos going on behind as well. As we get a replay up on screen, we'll see exactly what happened in this incident. And a big hit from behind, and Emerson Harvey gets absolutely pummeled into a spinning hard into the tyre wall as well. And you can see Brian Vanderwacker, he was trying to make a bit of an advantage of this and then just gets caught up in another accident with Matt Lapino, and sadly cars going everywhere, and the safety car understandably gets deployed. Because when you've got that many cars off the road and damaged and everything, there's going to be a lot of work needed for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, and the interesting thing here is because the safety car's been deployed before we've even completed one lap, it's not really going to have an immediate impact on pit strategy. Normally what we see is that people who've already done their pit stops do get an advantage when the safety car comes out, but because the safety car's been deployed immediately, it means that nobody's actually done a pit stop yet, so it just gives everybody a chance to bunch up. As we ride on board with Brian Vanderwacker for a look at what happened on this opening lap incident. So we actually avoided the first part of the incident, but it was further down the road where there was some more contact. I think that was Matt Lapino who moved across, and then Brian Vanderwacker became pretty much a pinball in a pinball machine, bouncing from one side of the racetrack to the other side, and once he rejoined the action, the track was completely blocked in front of him. But the order behind the safety car, it's Job Stewart ahead of Brenton Hobson and Christian Lindbaum, Jack Lemon in fourth, Ryan Wood, he's been so consistent in the first three rounds, once again inside the top five, Marcello Rivera, Mitchell McLeod, Tyson McAvoy, Casey Mann and Jordan Ford. That's your top 10 at the moment.
Yes, indeed. So they won't be able to make up too many more positions with the safety car being out. Brian Vanderwacker is doing his best to lose some positions, though. What has happened to him under safety car? We'll get a look right now. And just following the car in front, making his way through the left-hander of the carousel. And it just, wow, loses it all by himself, and lucky not to get collected by the following cars as well. But that was an odd one. We'll go on board. This explains a lot more of the story. Now, I'm not the best when it comes to race cars, but I'm going to take a guess and say that Searing's not even close to straight.
So he was trying to limp back to the pits, obviously, but while he's been on his way back to the pits, he sustained some more damage, and that agonisingly slow journey back to the pit lane will continue for Brian Vanderwacker. There's another car behind him as well. It might actually get bad enough that he's going to need a tow to get back to the pits, and indeed it looks like that's what he's elected to do at this stage. So, unfortunately, Brian Vanderwacker, who's racing in the same house as me but in a different room, his night not going according to plan so far.
No, not at all. So that's a disaster there for him. But the good news is, for this series, we do have a fast repair for all these drivers, so they are able to dive into the pits and get a brand new car for themselves. So their race isn't completely over, but they will, of course, be well at the back of the field. So not the best way to start off your race, but the good thing with the safety car coming out so early in the race, like you alluded to, is it allows all the drivers to bunch back up and still have a chance to fight for some kind of a result, even if the start hasn't gone to plan.
So the interesting thing for me here is, are we close enough to the end of the race that you could come in, take your pit stop right now, get back out onto the track and make it home based on fuel range? Well, here we go. I think we're about to answer this question, because we're going to see some cars dive in. Brenton Hobson comes down pit lane, and so too do quite a few other cars, but our race leader Job Stewart has elected to stay out on the racetrack for now. So a few differences in strategic options being taken by the different drivers at this stage.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the smart call is to just dive into the pits right now while you've got the opportunity so early in the race. Get yourself topped up and get yourself into a very good position later on in the race if these drivers aren't able to make it all the way to the end. Because, of course, we have seen many drivers try and do a fuel save to the end of the race to gain some positions. We saw Dylan Shepherd in last week's race, the Nürburgring and the Corvette C8R. He tried to make a fuel save and came so close, but it didn't pay off for him in the end. So you might see a few drivers try and gamble with that today and see if they can make it work when Dylan Shepherd didn't make it work last week.
So just interesting looking at the pit stop times because there's some quite big variations in the amount of time that cars have been stationary. So, for example, Javin Wood and Aidan Brand, they were stationary for 6.5 and 10 seconds respectively. Brenton Hobson, who was the first driver to come into the pits, he was stationary for a bit longer, 17.3 seconds, and as a result, he's now fallen down to be 5th highest out of the drivers who've pitted at this stage. So it could be that different drivers have made different calculations based on their fuel range, or it could be that some have elected to change tyres during their pit stops as well. And it's Lockie Mansell just flying solo for you at the moment, while our co-commentator Bo Albert just tidies up a couple of little technical issues at his end. Let's have a look at the championship points coming into round 4 tonight. Round 4, season 5 of the Just Send It Sim Racing series. The overall series champion will receive a trophy thanks to custom track art, and it's Ryan Wood. A win and 2 second place results of him out of the first 3 rounds. He leads the points, and 112 points for him. Mitchell McLeod, he was the other round winner in the Skip Barber car at Phillip Island. He's second in the standings on 92. And then it's Brenton Hobson in third, ahead of Mario Vartanian in position 4, Job Stewart in 5th, and then it's Andy Carey, Kobe Williams, Emerson Harvey, Ross Rizzo, and Steve Yates rounding out the top 10. Ross Rizzo, the winner last week at the Nürburgring. And as mentioned, there will be a trophy awarded to the overall champion. The other important point to note is that they are the points based on the total points scored from the first 3 rounds, but when we get to the end of this 12-week Just Send It season, all drivers will count their best 8 of those 12 rounds, which effectively means that everybody will drop their 4 worst rounds come the end of the season, and that's fairly conventional when you look at all of the official iRacing championships as well. It is, I think, given that sim racing is still very much a recreational activity, fair and reasonable to allow for the fact that people might have to miss around here or there. As we get set for a race restart, the safety car peels back into pit lane, and it's Job Stewart who leads the way. Very enthusiastic flaggy on the start-finish line, waving the green flag to resume action here, and already a change in position. That is for positions 3 and 4. That was Jordan Ford getting down the inside of Casey Mann and moving up into 3rd position. Tyler Howard on a bit of a charge as well, making the spot at the start and moving up to 5th. Such a high-speed section of racetrack. We're right on board with Brenton Hobson. He was very well placed before the pit stop shuffle started, but his pit stop a bit slower than some of his rivals, and he's now fighting hard to try and make up that lost ground, but he's under a bit of assault from behind as well. Holden Dealer Team replica car of Mitchell McLeod, and also Tyson McAvoy right behind him. Christian Lindbom embroiled in that battle as well, so that's a pretty hot contest just at the tail end of the top 10 at the moment. We're right on board with Tyson McAvoy. Now we go back to Mitchell McLeod, who's sitting there in behind the Lego car of Christian Lindbom, and a slightly wide moment there for McAvoy. That is going to allow Lindbom up the inside. The 2 cars will be side by side on the exit of the carousel. It will be a drag race between the 2 of them. No bus stop chicane here. So it's straight into the braking zone for a very, very tight right-hander. McAvoy trying to hang tough around the outside, but that hasn't worked for him. He's been shuffled off the racing line out into the marbles, loses some grip, loses some momentum, and loses positions to both Mitchell McLeod and to Ben Snell. So Tyson McAvoy getting shuffled back to position 13.
Yeah, it's a really feisty pack at the moment. You see all the drivers just squabbling on this restart to try and find any position they can. Marcelo Rivera now on the hunt, trying to find some positions with Aidan Brand in front of him, shifting through the gears into the big braking zone at turn number 1 in a matter of moments, darts to the inside and commits hard on the middle pedal and goes for the move. Contact, door mirror to door mirror, and that was vicious by Marcelo Rivera, pushing the driver off the road there. That was very violent and spits himself into the wall and causes a carnage behind, and that was a very odd moment from Marcelo. It almost looked like he turned out of the corner halfway through.
And one of the challenges here at the Watkins Glen circuit is because the speeds are so high, but also because you've got Armco barriers left and right, and there are some blind crests and some undulations, but also because you're just so committed through so many of the corners, if one driver has a spin or a crash, as we see right there, the cars that are coming through, often they don't realise that the track's blocked until the very last minute, and that's why you get, as we have seen, absolute pandemonium.
Absolutely. It is very easy for these drivers just to have a few little... When one little incident happens, it's very easy for it to collect a whole heap more cars, and I think that's another example of what we've just seen, and we're getting another look at it now with Marcelo Rivera and that issue that he had. That was a big impact to him, and unfortunately involved a lot of other cars as well. And that's the issue with that section up the hill, because of course there is arm code the entire way around. You see Christian Lindbaum there getting a big hit as well. That uphill section, there is not much room if there's a car spun to go either way. You are very much trapped in, and you can see a lot of drivers just getting caught out by that.
So that all started with the incident for Rivera. You have to feel sorry for Christian Lindbaum there, because he was just minding his own business. But it was Rivera who spun in front of him, and then as Lindbaum was regathering himself, he just got belted from pillar to post by a whole lot of other cars, and it created a pile-up a little bit further up the road. All this is pretty good news for our race leaders, because they've been able to pull clear of the carnage that's unfolded behind them. But let's not forget, we do have some differences in pit strategy, and at the moment, it's Tyler Howard in position 4, who is the highest place of the cars that's done a pit stop. The 3 cars ahead of him at the moment, Job Stewart, Jack Lemon and Jordan Ford, they all have to make a trip down pit lane at some point.
Absolutely, and the thing for Tyler as well is that he's not letting these top guys go, as we see a bit of a wiggle there from one of the drivers stuck on the outside of the carousel. We'll see if he can hold on to a place. No, he cannot, as that's Mitch McLeod who finds a position there. And that's one of those corners. If you run wide, using the camber of the circuit won't always help you. You, of course, can carry some much higher corner speed, but a lot of the time, it is the inside that is the preferred line, and that just allows the drivers to scoot on through. But for Tyler Howard at the moment to be 4.5 seconds off the race leader, but essentially in a much better strategic position on fuel and tyres, he's in a great spot right now. He just has to stick with Jordan Ford in front of him, make sure the gap doesn't get too extreme, and from there he might be in a very good shot at the win here.
So Tyler Howard yet to actually win a race in the Just Descended series as well, so if he could hold on in that position, it would be...
Big incident there, one car up and over. Who was that? One of the drivers involved in a big accident and escapes immediately. That was Jordan Ford, and I think one of the drivers behind as well. But our 3rd place runner, who we were just talking about for Tyler Howard not to let go of, has had an issue, and now was this all by himself. Jordan working through, he's going to clip the grass. And when you clip the grass like that, the car is always going to over-rotate. In fact, there's another car spun at the left-hander as well, but a poor rejoin, and bang! One of the drivers gets absolutely pummeled, and that's Ben Snell, and sadly that race is well and truly over for him with a big impact.
That's one of the most frustrating things, isn't it? You're minding your own business and a car just drives straight out in front of you, leaving you with absolutely nowhere to go, and you do have to feel a bit sorry for Ben Snell, because he was very much the innocent victim in that incident. He's back in the pits now for a lengthy spell to undertake some repairs. As we see Jaden Russell negotiating his way around the outside of a slower moving car at the moment. Job Stewart continues to lead ahead of Jack Lemon. Tyler Howard, who we would describe as the effective race leader at the moment, he's just over 5 seconds off the overall lead of the race, so he will move into the top spot once Stewart and Lemon peel off to complete their pit stops.
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know when that pit stop range is going to come, and we've got a few drivers already taking some pit stops, including Christina, who dives in. Jordan Ford, of course, just involved in that incident, is in the pits as well. But we don't really have any idea as another driver. These cars are proving very difficult around the Watkins Glen circuit today, but we don't have much information on how long we expect the tyres to go. Will the fuel last the entire race now that we've had a safety car intervention for a couple of laps? There's a lot of unknowns for all of us involved in this, and I'm sure for the drivers, this isn't a car that many drivers particularly specialize in. So for everyone, it's a bit of a learning game right now, seeing what the fuel numbers are each time you go across the start-finish line. How are the tyres feeling? Are they getting a bit worse for wear with drivers sliding around? And we're talking about, can the car make it on a tank of fuel? I think Joe Stewart, his answer's come to a pretty conclusive no.
It has, because he's come into the pits now to take his stop, and that's going to cause him to plummet down the order, having to take that pit stop under green flag conditions. So it's Tyler Howard who leads the race now by 1.3 seconds over Brenton Hobson. You will not believe, I just looked up to see what Tyler Howard's previous best Just Send It race result was, Bo. Position 25. So if he's able to hold on here, it would be by far and away the best result that he has ever had in the Just Send It series, but he's got the mega experience and mega capable of Brenton Hobson hunting him down.
Absolutely, and if there's one thing anybody knows about Brenton Hobson, is if you give him a target in front of you, just dangling a carrot in front of his windscreen, he is going to chase and chase and chase until that checkered flag falls. He does not give up at all. And if you just watch the delta time and the space we've been talking about Brenton Hobson, the gap has come from 1.2 to bang on 1 second, the difference between the two drivers as they work their way up towards the very tricky end of the carousel. Tyler Howard is going to be feeling the pressure right now. A bit of a wiggle there on corner exit as well. What he has to do is that mirror, forget about it. Do not look at it. Just head down, focus, eyes in front when there's a car spinning right in front of you. If there is anything that's going to put pressure on Tyler right now, a spinning lapped car is exactly what he did not need.
No, he actually did a really good job to maintain his composure, though, even while that car was having its own incident in front of him. But he's been able to maintain the margin of just under 1 second over Brenton Hobson. Mitchell McLeod now up into third position. And importantly, in the context of the championship here, Mitchell McLeod came into this round second in the points. Brenton Hobson currently third in the points. And both of those drivers well ahead of our championship leader, Ryan Wood, who's down in 12th position. So a good opportunity here tonight for both Mitchell McLeod and Brenton Hobson to make up some valuable ground on Ryan Wood in terms of the championship scenario.
Absolutely, and they'll both be thinking about that as well. It's early days in the championship, so you can't really particularly be a runaway championship leader, even if Ryan Wood has attempted to do that. But for Brenton Hobson and Mitchell McLeod, they're going to do anything they can to get that gap down, and right now, they're both in a fantastic spot. Hobbo, 0.5 of a second off the race lead. Mitchell McLeod, very, very experienced, knows exactly how to battle with other cars around him. But he's in a tricky spot right now with two drivers, Jarvin Wood and Tyson McAvoy, absolutely breathing down his neck. And in fact, breathing down his neck no longer, because Jarvin Wood is alongside and Mitchell McLeod is going to go late on the brakes to defend this, but not as late as Wood, who dives up the inside. McLeod has nothing he can do but try and hang tough around the outside, but gets squeezed and hung out to dry. No way through, says Jarvin Wood, up onto the podium places. And now McLeod has to be careful because McAvoy behind has a chance as... Is that Tyler Howard, the race leader, and another rejoin that is not going to plans, but he was under so much pressure. A best finisher, 25th, found himself in the race lead, and it is the story we have seen so many times in the first half of this race. Get one wheel on that grass, the car will rotate.
And he will be kicking himself making that mistake there, Tyler Howard, because he'd done everything right up to that point. The pit strategy was good, the pace was good as well. He was maintaining the gap over Brenton Hobson. Just that slight mistake, dropping the wheel off the edge of the racetrack, unsettled the car and caused him to fire hard into the Armco. And that'll be significant damage to that car, which is going to take him out of the lead places. So all of a sudden, this battle between Jarvin Wood and Mitchell McLeod becomes the battle for the runner-up spot. Brenton Hobson now leading by 6.9 seconds as McLeod sends it down the inside. Wood looks to do the switchback, nose-to-tail contact between the two cars, and taking big advantage of that is going to be Tyson McAvoy, who draws up alongside Mitchell McLeod, albeit on the outside as they head into the next left-hander. He decides that discretion is the better part of valor and tucks in behind, looking for the double toe from both Jarvin Wood and Mitchell McLeod in front of him.
Yeah, absolutely, and Jarvin Wood is doing a very good job at the moment. There is a little bit of a question mark over his car in regards to fuel consumption. Of course, he's come from 23rd on the grid up to 4th, so he's well and truly a mover and shaker. In fact, I'm reading it all wrong. His highest position is stated as 4th at the control line. Actually finds himself in position number 2 right now, so really finding some ways through the field at the moment. But of course, fuel is a big issue here over the fact of a lot of cars. So Is he going to be able to stretch it another 19 minutes on a tank? It'll be pretty tight, I would think. But Mitch McLeod and Tyson McAvoy will continue fighting behind for who's going to miss out on one of the podium spots. And we see Kyle Greesh under all kinds of pressure now with another driver diving up the inside to take 16th place away. But 41st to 17th place is no mean feat. And Kyle, our biggest mover and shaker of the race at the moment, how about another position as easy as you like as Andy Carey becomes, what, maybe our 4th or 5th victim of the corner?
So many drivers getting caught out by that corner, and Andy Carey, who we saw on the podium in the Mazda MX-5s back in round 1 of the series at Alton Park, now gets caught out by that. There's Maya Rose, formerly Maya Ott. She's currently in 10th position. She was actually a bit higher than that, and one of the challenges of these cars, Bo, was that they're very easy to lock the rear brakes, or if you down change without flipping the throttle, you can also suffer a compression lockup. And unfortunately, I think that's caught Mia Rose out there. Turn number 1, as we look back towards this battle for positions 2, 3, 4. Jarvin Wood still in 2nd position, fending off the attacks from Mitchell McLeod and from Tyson McAvoy.
Yeah, and these guys are really fighting at the moment and really trying to get any edge over each other that they can, which I'm surprised about, given the fact there's still a long way to go in this race. So if they continue like this until the very end of the race, I'll be very surprised and very impressed. They're all doing a great job at the moment, working their way through the boot section of the Watkins Glen circuit. So not an easy part of the circuit, and this is the corner. I can't believe it. I actually, no, moving on, I refuse. What is going on?
It's like, if it was real life, you'd say that there's oil or debris or something else on the racetrack that's catching people out, but Jarvin Wood, running in 2nd position, gets caught out by the same corner that so many drivers have fallen victim to. As we're right on board with Mario Vartanian. Don't tell me another driver's been caught out at this left-hander. Well, he has, only this time it was contact with Jarvin Wood that's seen Vartanian go for a spin.
Yeah, so a very tricky few corners there for Jarvin Wood, but look at this battle for position number 8. Mia Rose under all kinds of pressure right now. Beswick and Stewart, who of course is the last of our pitters at the moment and is making a very strong recovery drive. 2 in 1, thank you very much. On my way, says Job Stewart with a great move into turn number 1.
Well, Job Stewart's suboptimal pit strategy for him, of course, not taking his stop under safety car when everybody else did, but he's got serious pace at the moment, Job Stewart, a minute 47.2 last time around, which was the 2nd best time, only behind our race leader, Brenton Hobson, and he's charging his way up through the order. Is Job Stewart and Kyle Greck getting involved in a tangle.
Oh, there's another in the... If I had a drink every time a car spun, I would not be able to figure out which way is north and south right now. This is absolutely ridiculous. What is happening at this circuit? I've been doing sim racing commentary since 2015. Never, ever have I seen this many drivers at the one corner find it such a struggle. I would love to know what the drivers think the issue here is. Is it just the way the elevation changed? Because of course that corner, you go up the bit of a rise there where you apex the corner there. So is it the elevation change that's perhaps fooling the drivers and they're running wide and putting the cars in awkward places? Or I'm really running out of explanations for what's happening there.
I'm not exactly sure what Christina Nazarick was doing there either, because it looks there like she shortcut the circuit altogether. Joker lap. Yeah, we'll go with that. Probably not a bad place to be, because it saves her from getting caught up in some of those incidents. But what that all means is that Mitchell McLeod's up to second position, and he's now got some relatively clear track space around him. It's about 1.3 seconds back to Tyson McAvoy, 7.7 seconds up the road to our race leader, Brenton Hobson, and some of the other drivers, just by virtue of staying out of trouble, have moved up the order as well. Ryan Wood, our championship leader, up to 7th position. Still not as high as he would like, of course, but a lot better than where he was a few laps ago, down in, I think it was 12th or 13th place.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of drivers who have managed to stay out of trouble and just find their way up the order at the moment. Aiden Brandt from 21st finds himself in 4th at the moment, and under a bit of pressure from Jarvin Wood behind, who did run into some issues earlier in the race as well with that spin just a few laps ago. But plenty of drivers who are perhaps out of place or not where we would expect them to be. So these last 14 minutes, although we see some slightly big gaps throughout some of the battles, I think we've got a very interesting last half of this race because a lot of drivers will be making comebacks and a lot of drivers will be driving nervous as they try and defend their position in the dying laps.
Just having a look at the lap times to see who's got good pace at the moment. Now, championship leader Ryan Wood on a bit of a march at the moment. 1 minute 46.9 for him last time around, which was quicker than all of the cars ahead of him on the racetrack. But the fastest driver on the circuit overall last time through was actually Christian Lindbom, down in 22nd position. Another driver on at the comeback trail after being caught up in some incidents a bit earlier on. So here's the fight for... actually, no, my apologies. That's not a move for position. Oh, yes, it is. Sorry, Jarvin Wood up the inside of Aidan Brand. So that is a change in position number 4. Jarvin Wood back up into 4th spot as he tries to recover from the spin that he had a couple of laps ago.
And it's a bit of an odd place to go for an overtake turn 1 because what you then do is you give the car that you've just overtaken a big draft advantage down this long back straight past where the NASCAR bus stop chicane would be, and then into these really fast right-handers. You give them an opportunity to just come right back, and that's what the driver of Aidan Brand is trying to do, but he has to go a very long way around the outside here at this next left-hander, and that's a tricky place to do it, and has to concede the place to Jarvin Wood, who slides through the inside up into 4th place, which I'm sure he would feel is rightfully his after that moment a little earlier in this race. But a strong charge at the moment, and actually not too far behind Tyson McAvoy either. So if Jarvin Wood is able to really pump out some laps right now, go for some purples, really maximise his effort, maybe a podium is not out of the question just yet.
One of the awards that we always like to hand out in Just Send It is, we call it the Best Postman Award for the driver who makes up the most positions from where they started. And at the moment, that award stands with our 6th place driver, Hayden Felici, who started in position 30 and has come up to 6th spot again with 24 positions for Hayden Felici at this stage.
Absolutely, and that's a massive effort for those drivers to have found so many positions in what is still a relatively short race. Let's not forget, still 11 minutes to go as Kyle Gresh is a slightly disappointing race, I'm sure by his standards race, is not going his way at all with another moment. We've seen that once or twice this race already. Sometimes not of his own doing, but this time, sadly, I think it was all by himself into the left-hander. And I'm gonna say that was a bad downshift, and the car just rotated very quickly from there.
You could see on the dash there that he shifted back to 2nd gear for that corner, so I think you're right there, Bo. I think potentially a compression lock-up. Here's Daniel Yeaman, who we often see in GT cars in the various iRacing series, and he's another driver who's been caught out by dropping his wheel off the edge of the racetrack, and that causing the car to become unsettled and flick across into the wall, as Ryan Wood in 7th position starts to put some pressure on Hayden Felici, who currently occupies position 6. Job Stewart coming up behind those two as well.
Yeah, exactly, and Job is really putting on some pressure at the moment, only 5 seconds back to this battle at the moment. I think the gap might be a little bit less than the timing screen might say, because he looks very, very nearby. And we'll see what he can do as Ryan Wood continues to try and maintain his championship gap at the moment. Of course, doing very well in the standings, but this is going to be, I think, one of his not so best results of the season as Brian Vanderwacker goes through the final corner there. Got a car on the inside. I think that's Daniel Yeaman, and that was an all too easy pass there.
Indeed it was, so that moves Brian Vanderwacker up into position 21, just 1 place outside of the points. Points awarded down to position 20 for this season of Just Send It. So the idea obviously is to finish inside the top 20 to accumulate as many of those championship points as you can. And Brian Vanderwacker, another man on a bit of a mission. I can tell you that he takes his sim racing extremely seriously. And I know that because he lives in the same house that I do. And he will not have enjoyed being caught up in those incidents early in the race. As we have a look and see what happened to Cameron Gall. And I'm not sure if he got a touch from behind. The overhead shot might tell us a little bit more of the story, because there were some cars in front that were a bit slow. And No, he's actually just locked the rear brake. So I think he might have been caught out there, Cameron Gall, by the fact that the cars ahead were a little bit slower than he expected us. Here we go. Ryan Wood, Hayden Felici. This is a battle for position. Position 6 to be precise, and they're going to have a nice drag race down the hill. Will be our championship leader, Ryan Wood, who prevails in that little exchange there. Felici not giving up though, looking to the outside. Can he switch back to the inside, down under brakes? Nope, not quite close enough. And it's Ryan Wood who picks up that position.
That right-hander is extremely tough to try and get the inside of someone. The carousel that we all know, which is the very high-speed one at the ends of our back straight, that has a little bit of camber to it that you can use, but for the most part, you want to be the car on the very inside. That particular right-hander through the boot section is remarkably cambered, and it means that the car on the outside or the middle of the circuit, ideally where you want to be, always has a pretty major advantage. So that's the place you want to be. Glenn McLeod, I think, has been to the place you don't want to be in the Armco. There's a bit of damage to his car, unfortunately, there, as he continues to battle on for hopefully a top 20 finish in this race. Jarvan Wood, very, very fast pace, but hasn't been able to break away from Aiden Brand at the moment, who is now hunting him down for 4th place.
These drivers can't afford to battle too fiercely with one another, because if they do, the next group of cars not too far behind Ryan Wood and Hayden Felici will catch them if they cost one another too much time by squabbling for position. Christian Lindbom, another driver, continuing his charge forward and continuing to set the fastest times of any driver on the racetrack. 1 minute 46.6 lap time the last time around for Christian Lindbom, who sits in position 16.
Yeah, absolutely. So not the place you ideally want to be, but 16th place is still a great effort. And yeah, very nice looking Lego car there for Christian Lindbom. And it's a livery that always stands out, I think it's safe to say, but hopefully some very good results to come in the not too distant future beyond 16th place, because of course very, very competitive in the right circumstances is Christian Lindbom. So good results definitely coming their way towards the end of the season. But Aiden Brand and Jarvan Wood continuing their battle, and you will notice this battle has swapped around a little bit. Aiden Brand now the leading driver ahead of Jarvan Wood, and Jarvan was very, very competitive at the particularly the start of the race, but now just falling back a little bit. I'm wondering if something is, if I'm reading too much into this, or if he is perhaps fuel saving just a little bit. We suspected he might be just a little bit short on fuel, and we think maybe that could be what he's doing, is just fuel saving, making sure he can get himself to the end of the race, and hoping that some of the drivers ahead of him in the order, well, I'm just going to not even bother finishing my sentence, because Jarvan Wood, the fuel was too tight. There was not 6 minutes left, and he has to dive onto pit road. So all the pace that they showed in today's race, sadly to no avail with a late race pit stop. So what does that mean for some of our other drivers that are also perhaps a little bit marginal on fuel? Brenton Hobson right now leading by 8 seconds. All the command of this race in the world. And if he needs to do any kind of fuel saving, he's got quite a gap behind him to do it, ahead of Mitchell McLeod, of course, as you alluded to before, Lockie. 3rd and 2nd in the championship, respectively. With Ryan Wood in 5th, they won't be closing as much in the championship points, but nonetheless, gaining points is still better than losing.
So, in the case of Jarvan Wood, his first pit stop was only 6.5 seconds, so I reckon that he probably just miscalculated and didn't put enough fuel in when he came down pit lane his initial pit stop, which is why he's had to come back in for another splash and dash. He still managed to make it out of the pits inside the top 10 though, rejoined the racetrack in 9th position, so not a total disaster for Jarvan Wood having to make that extra pit stop. He's just ahead of Mario Vartanian at the moment, and this should set up a nice little contest between these two drivers over 9th and 10th position in the final 5 minutes of the race.
Absolutely. We'll see how this battle emerges between the two, as Mario Vartanian will try and apply a little bit of pressure. He's had a bit of a tricky race himself. You can see a bit of damage to his Cadillac. The good news for him is these cars are very, very strong. And as I sort of mentioned in the intro, they are built a little bit like a supercar, so you can lean on each other a little bit more, and you can use the bumpers if you absolutely necessarily have to. But Mario Vartanian sadly just not the best run through the boot section, allowing Jarvan Wood to just pull away bit by bit with 4 minutes to go. So I think Jarvan Wood may be looking good for 9th, but the gap to 8th, sadly, is beyond assailable. So for Jarvan Wood, I think this may be as good as it gets in this race, sadly. Go back up to Hayden Felici in position number 6, coming under a whole bunch of pressure at the moment from Job Stewart. 1.3 seconds is the margin. We'll see what the gap is at the end of the back straight. See just how powerful the draft is. 1.3 seconds, and it will go all the way down to 1.3 seconds. Fantastic, love to see it, but running wide through the carousel for Felici is not ideal. And that's just going to allow Job Stewart to close up a little bit more again. So these drivers getting very, very close now. 0.7 of a second. So you can see just how much running wide at the carousel has really hurt Felici there. And Job Stewart, look at the closing difference under brakes. I don't know if Job Stewart perhaps overdrove the entry of the corner, or if Hayden Felici is just under a bunch of pressure right now alongside Will Go Stewart. And I think the white flag is being thrown here. Nope, forget about that. He's going to fight it all the way to the end. But eventually the white flag does have to fly. The surrender from Felici. Job Stewart was approaching very fast indeed, and showed very strong pace all race long. But we'll see how the pace is for drivers like Isaac Nichols, who was under pressure from Brian Vanderwacker around the outside. And this is going to be very nice for Brian, who finds himself with the draft as well. And that is what the draft will do. Isaac just unable to do anything there compared to the straight line speed of Brian. And I'm sure Brian will be very happy for the slipstream that Jordan gave him. Now the issue for Jordan is Brian wants his place too.
Well, Vanderwacker's been sitting in behind Ford for a few laps now. Basically, Ford's been doing all of the hard work of overtaking the cars, and Vanderwacker's just been following him through. So I reckon that Brian will sit in behind Jordan and wait till the very last moment to maybe try and make the move through up into what would be position number 17. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, how effective the draft and the slipstream is around this circuit, just how much toe you can get by virtue of the hole being punched in the air by the car in front.
Yeah, absolutely. The draft is always a big factor, especially when you have such a long straight and an uphill straight as well. Because, of course, that back straight actually starts all the way back at the exit of turn number 1. And in between turn number 1 and turn number 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the carousel at turn number 5 is a very large elevation change. So however your exit is from that turn number 1 leads you up all the way through the elevation change. So if you get a bad run, the car behind you gets a good run. Add that with the slipstream as well. Back straight is a fantastic overtake opportunity, as Emerson Harvey, thank you very much for the example, up the inside of Eddie Beswick. Thank you very much.
Fairly textbook move there, wasn't it, for Emerson Harvey? Oh, it was Eddie Beswick, having just been passed. He's going to lose it and fire it into the Armco. Just unsettled a bit there, maybe forced out of rhythm as a result of being passed up the inside, and loses it on the exit of the corner, and that'll be damage for him to contend with in the closing couple of laps of this race.
Yeah, absolutely. That is not ideal at all, and you can actually see a little bit of a wiggle there as well, so I wonder if he's really knackered the steering alignment there, and the car is really suffering. You can see he's a bit of wheel work on the straight, and it is very marginally off-center, so not ideal for Eddie Beswick, but I think that should be okay to hold on for the next 30 seconds and potentially one more lap.
This battle continuing between Jordan Ford and Brian Vanderwacker. I did suggest that Vanderwacker would wait till the dying stages to have a crack at the overtaking manoeuvre side by side into the braking zone for the right-hander. Both of them showing each other just enough racing room on the exit, and it will be Jordan Ford who just manages to hold on to that position for the time being, but under all sorts of pressure from Vanderwacker as our race leader Brenton Hobson breaks the white flag. Final lap has commenced this time through.
Yes, indeed. So one lap to go for Brenton Hobson. The gap to second place is pretty comfortable, as is the gap for Mitchell McLeod as well. So for all our podium sitters, unless something happens at no doubt the third last corner of the circuit, then they will be able to hold on to those spots. But for other drivers, it's going to be a little bit different, like this battle on screen right now. And I think that's Brian Vanderwacker just getting into the back there of the driver in front. So a big scrap into the dying laps, as you can see. Brian trying to get the charge now on Ford, the run up the hill. And in fact, the speed difference is pretty good in the favor of Brian. We'll see what he's able to do in it as they go down this long back straight, 260 kilometers an hour and still going faster. Not able to pull alongside though, just unable to make it happen. So if Brian Vanderwacker is going to make this happen, it's going to have to happen somewhere else. But we have had the checkered flag fly already. Sorry for missing that, ladies and gentlemen. But Brenton Hobson takes the checkered flag, and a great charge for him in his championship challenge. Mitchell McLeod in position number 2 as well. And Tyson McAvoy rounds out the podium. A great job from them. And Ryan Wood in 4th, continuing a run of top 5s to start off his championship campaign.
And that is race win number 4 in the Just Send It series for Brenton Hobson. So well done to him there as well. Now Brian Vanderwacker rapidly running out of overtaking opportunities to try and get around Jordan Ford. Don't think he's going to be quite close enough coming into these final sequence of corners unless Jordan Ford makes a mistake, because the final left to right hand are not really sections of the racetrack where you can actually make a passing manoeuvre unless the car in front of you gets it wrong. So Jordan Ford swinging through should hold on to what will be position number 17 in the race. Well, another eventful Just Send It edition here at the Watkins Glen circuit on this Tuesday. And I think it started with a fair bit of carnage and chaos, didn't it? One very early safety car, bit of a variation in pit strategy as we've come to expect, but in the end a very deserving winner in Brenton Hobson. He gets the win by 7.5 seconds over Mitchell McLeod. Tyson McAvoy into 3rd position ahead of Ryan Wood. And then it's Job Stewart. Hayden Felici wins the biggest postman or the best postman award from 30th on the grid up to 6th. Maya Rose in 7th. Aidan Brand in 8th position ahead of Jarvan Wood. And then Cameron Gall completing the top 10.
Finishing in position number 11 goes to Mario Vartanian, who finishes only 2 seconds clear, or actually 2 seconds exactly. That is really nice for my OCD, over Emerson Harvey in position number 12. Tim Mitchell in 13th place with Eddie Beswick and Christian Lindbom eventually finding their way up to 15th place. So a late race pass there for Christian Lindbom. Simon Francis in our 16th place ahead of Jordan Ford and Brian Vanderwacker in that fantastic scrap we saw in the closing laps, with Isaac Nichols and Jonathan Bykoff the top 20.
Back then to Ian Quast going to cars that finished a lap down now. Glenn McLeod, Dylan Golson, Daniel Yeaman in 24th ahead of Tom Wilkinson, Phil Howe in 26th, Casey Mann, Kobe Williams, Kyle Breck, and Christina Nazarick finishing 10 laps down in position 30.
And I'm just going to assume all of these drivers spun out at the third last corner. Such was the chaos we saw. And that includes 31st placed Andy Carey, Jaden Russell, Tyler Howard, who we saw in a seriously strong position so early in the race. Sadly, wasn't to be at the end of it all. Jack Lemon in 34th, Matt Lapino in 35th, ahead of Dylan Campbell, Eden Thornborough, John Quast, Ben Snell, and Jamie Jaros.
And in the final classification, some non-finishers to get through. Russell Clark, Marcello Rivera, Matthew Clout, Reece Cohen, Simon Black, and then Shane Roffey. And that wraps up all of the action here on SimSpeed TV Network for Week 4, Season 5 of the Just Send It iRacing series. Hope you've enjoyed all of the action this evening. Big thank you to our sponsors, Logitech G, Custom Track Art, who are going to be presenting the trophy to our Just Send It Season 5 champion, and Owned 3D game streaming as well. Big thanks to my co-commentator, Bo Albert, our producer, Jay Kennedy, behind the scenes on the cameras. You've been watching all of the action from the Just Send It Sim Racing series right here on the SimSpeed TV network. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Lockie Mansell signing off. See you next week. Bye for now.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson! Anderson's up to
Oh my god! Oh! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go! Oh no!
This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?